Sample layering. Step 1. Tearing the gradients. Your goal is to make the weight of each tube within 10 milligrams of the other tubes, and to leave enough room to add the desired amount of sample to each tube so that the centrifuge rotor is balanced and the sample volumes are the same. Remove the cap from the tube by tilting it back. The side of the cap with the hole on the bottom should come off first and is indicated by some extra material on the cap. Removing the short cap should leave around 3 millimeters of space. A tube with sample added, ready for the centrifuge, should have roughly 2 millimeters of space. Less space and the gradient may spill. More space and the top of the tube may collapse. Therefore, from the first tube, remove the total volume of your sample less the volume of 1 millimeter of your tube. The SW41 tube holds 150 microliters per millimeter. In this case, we want to add 300 microliters of sample, so we will remove approximately 150 microliters of gradient. We have found that between 1 millimeter and 3 millimeters of sample give the best looking peaks. The table shows the volume per millimeter of height for each commonly used tube type, and the recommended minimum and maximum sample volumes. Removing the excess gradient can be done with a pipette man or the sample layering device we provide. If using the pipette man, be sure to cut off the end of the tip to make a larger opening. Dry the first tube. Place the first tube in a rack on a milligram balance and tare the balance. Remove the cap from the next tube, then dry and place it on the balance. The weight displayed in milligrams is the number of microliters you will need to remove from the second tube so that it is perfectly balanced with the first tube. In this example, we will remove approximately 133 microliters. Lay the end of the pipette across the top of the tube, placing the open end at the very top of the gradient so the lower layers are not disturbed before removing the appropriate volume of the gradient. Put the tube back on the scale. It should now read less than 0.1 grams. But less than 0.01 grams is usually achievable. Repeat these steps for the remaining tubes. Gradients made with the long cap for equilibrium separations follow the same principle, but the space left by the cap for sample is 9 millimeters, so the calculation of the amount of the gradient to remove is different. Because we want to be left with 2 millimeters of empty space, we should remove our sample volume minus 7 times the volume per millimeter for our tube. The nature of equilibrium gradients allows any sample volume within reason to be layered on top of the gradient while still resolving sharp peaks during centrifugation. Step 2. Layering the sample. Samples can be layered with either the sample layering device we provide or a pipette man. If using the pipette man, be sure to cut the end off to enlarge the opening. A larger opening results in lower velocity flow, which prevents the sample from mixing with the top of the gradient. To keep the weights of the tubes the same and to get consistent results, it is important to layer the exact same amount of sample on each tube. When collecting the sample with the sample layering device, be sure to leave a small cushion of air in the syringe before sucking it in so you can dispense all of the liquid. Here, 300 microliters of sample has been collected and is ready to be layered on the gradient. Place the pipette across the tube and slightly into the gradient. Pull the pipette slightly up the wall of the tube, keeping it in contact with the meniscus. Slowly deposit the sample on top of the gradient. Good layering results in a sharp interface. The blue color of the sample in this video is for demonstration purposes only. Repeat for each tube. If necessary, for equilibrium gradients, a larger sample layering device can be made using an uncut pipette. For more information, visit biocompinstruments.com.